Exams are coming, and parents and learners are panicking about the stress for the exam. And in this video, I'm going to talk you through how to overcome this, how to get the better of the panic system in your mind. And if you bear with me, I'm going to talk you straight through the whole process. And by the end of the video, you are going to have a complete toolkit for free today of how to deal with the panic situation when it comes to studying and what to do instead. And there's going to be a very simple system shared here today, and I'm glad to offer a very nice promotion where people are going to be able to get the book for free with all the workbooks and everything. So let's get into it. The name of the book is Don't Panic, a Lost Learner's Guidebook Back to Earth, and I based it on the Douglas Adams books. Those of you that know my videos will know that I based it on The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that's why you see planets and spaceships everywhere. It didn't go very well because people thought it was about space, but it's not. It's about studying. So if you go to the website here, everybody, then you'll end up, if you click on the button, then you'll end up here on my main website. And if you click on the main menu and on book, then you'll get to this sign up page, which is just to sign up for the newsletter, getting the additional materials and the newsletter. It's a kit.com form. Very simple. If you look carefully here at the bottom, there's an actual picture of the real softback, the soft cover book that you can buy on Amazon for $19 or 330 odd rand. But for now, once you've filled in the form, you'll go straight to Amazon.com, and it is completely free. Read for free. And there's a 5-day promotion where the book will actually stay free. You don't have to even pay for Kindle. So it's called Don't Panic, How to Study Without the Stress. Used to be called The Successful Student's Guide to the Galaxy. So I've changed the name, How to Study Without the Stress, because people thought that the book was a space novel. So I'm laughing at myself, because this was actually, the intention was to take you on a journey and use the extended metaphor of going through space. But yeah, let's just leave it there. But here it is, and I'm going to just talk you through. If you've watched my videos, you will know about this book, and that it was the Galaxy series, and it was a growing collection of educational resources, but I've rebranded it now because the geek in me lost the battle. But if you look at the main chapters of this book, you will see that it's all about dealing with that panic situation, and why smart learners panic, and why trying harder makes it worse. And then you have to learn how to do your calm before competence, and stability comes first. And then we read chapter 4, your environment, how to fix that very quickly and gently. And chapter 5 was all about that timetable and the anchors. If you go and look for those videos, you'll see that we don't, in modern technology, when it comes to studying, we don't just do a planner with lots of hours for every subject. We talk about anchors. And an anchor, very briefly, for those that don't know, is when you say, at 3:30 this afternoon, I'm going to get home, I'm going to sit on my chair, take out one of my books, and I'm going to do 20 minutes of actual mathematics. That's an anchor. Instead of slotting in a random time period that is not motivational. We really want to hit those anchors. Another example would be to say, after having a break at 4 o'clock, I'll go and play some soccer outside, or I'll take the dog for a walk, and then at 5, before my parents get home, I'm going to sit again, put the phone in the other room, and study for 45 minutes or 25 minutes by reading my English novel, or by revising my business studies notes and writing down one full page of notes. There's an anchor. So we have to get smart. Teenagers, you guys are clever. You know what you're doing. You just have to learn the skills. You just have to learn the basic skills, and here they are in this book for you. So today we're looking at chapter 6, and it's the real study methods. So let's scroll down. I might stop here quickly. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not lazy. You're not incapable. You're not weak. You're not failing because you lack ability. And when I say failing, everybody, it's not always about failing and not being progressed on your report. For many learners, that is a problem, yes. They just can't get over the 30 or 40% mark. But for most of our learners, passing is not the problem. It's the pressure of doing really well, especially in your higher grades and your later years in high school, when you have to get those bursaries and you have to get the excellent marks. I mean, they talk about a bachelor's. In my school, we have to get 50 for 4 subjects, and you have to get 40 for your home language, and so on and so on. But that's not good enough. The principal had a long speech last week in my school where she explained it in detail again. And the kids were looking at her and they were thinking, "Ma'am, what are you on about? We're passing." Her message was, guys, you cannot get to uni if you don't have the best marks possible. There are too many kids applying. And parents, I don't want to get on my soapbox tonight, but let me tell you, if we're going to get our kids qualified to get into those careers that we want them to have, they need to study very hard at school, and they need to take their studies very seriously, because otherwise they won't get in. The competition's too high. And it seems to me that getting started in a business or using AI and all of that is overrated. People still want you to get that qualification. They still want a diploma or a certificate or a degree, and the business of getting a qualification is still desirable, and it is still something that guarantees you a better chance. It does not guarantee you a job, and I don't know where you're viewing this from, but here in my country, I'm in Johannesburg, everybody. Here in Johannesburg and in the whole of South Africa, even though it's going well in most sectors, there's a lot of joblessness. Our young people, 30% of our young people are without jobs. Why? Is it because they've stopped looking? Many of them have. Is it because they don't have the ability? No. It's about not performing optimally. Okay, so please go and visit my website, laurensbreitenbach.com. There's all kinds of resources there for you. But for tonight's video, I want to scroll down, and we eventually want to get to chapter 6. And I might just stop over here quickly. And I said, at every end of every chapter in this book, you will find a companion section with 10 elements. So this is a practical book. It's not just theory. Anybody can go onto ChatGPT these days and say, hey, teach me some study methods. But I spent 2 years researching this, and I really went down and filtered it down and distilled it into a book of 230 odd pages for you. So I really hope that you'll grab this free copy while it is available. We started off in chapter 1 with why smart learners panic and why that matters. And we talked about this case study of the boy named Daniel. I named him after a friend of mine who passed away, Donnie. And his name was Daniel D. as the author. He wrote quite a few books in the last few years of his life. A really nice guy and a good friend. And Daniel over here, who's a fake name for a boy in grade 10, is actually a very bright young man, but he is described as being inconsistent. You see? Now, why is that? And he seems distracted. And he's always behind, even when he's working. And then I take you through the whole process, and we talked about it being stressed out. Parents, if there's one thing you need to learn from me tonight, it is the fact that the child that is in a panic state will not learn. Panic happens because our learners, whose brains are not fully developed yet, go into that fight or flight mode. It's hardwired into our genetics. It's a terrible thing. They don't know how to study because they are freaked out. And it has to stop. We have to teach them, no, calm down. If you read here, it says, here's the science behind it. Your brain has an alarm system called the amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure that reacts to perceived threats. So it fires and it actually freaks them out. They cannot study. Look at this. Strange but true. Stress hormones can shrink working memory capacity by up to 30% in teenagers during exams. Your brain is not underperforming because you are lazy. It is underperforming because it believes it is in danger. That is a systems problem, not a character flaw. We then start unpacking why the panic happens and how the genetic build of a person triggers their cortisol and adrenaline, and how they panic because they feel threatened. So we have to rewire the brain, and we have to rephrase our thinking, and that's the secret to studying. So there's no need for shame. There's no need to put guilt on each other. I remember I was very lucky. My parents never put pressure on us because we were in a home where both the parents were teachers. So they were not in the mood to give us long speeches in the afternoons. They let us be. But we were 3 brothers and we were self-motivated. I think we did well because we knew for us, those decades ago, if you wanted to make it, you had to study. These days, it's still the same. There are more opportunities, I feel, but yeah, that's a chapter for another day. Right. So when you go through the book, I'm going to fast forward a bit here. You'll see that there's lots of content. Then we go to chapter 2, and it was so counterintuitive, and I think many teenagers, even those that have read the book already, are struggling with this because it seems so counterintuitive, where we say, I'm working hard, I'm sitting here on my chair, I'm trying, and the chapter's name is Why Trying Harder Makes Things Worse. So chapter 2 unpacks the whole thing, and I'll just read this one paragraph here. It says, so you do what you've been taught to do. You try harder. You push yourself to sit longer. You tell yourself to focus. You stay up later. You sacrifice the sleep, the breaks, and anything that looks like rest. From the outside, it looks like discipline. From the inside, it feels like drowning more quietly. That's a very drastic image, I know. But it is the cruel paradox of panic-driven studying. The more effort you apply, the worse your results become. And the brain will not cooperate. Why? Because it's stressed out. We have to get that into our heads now. So, there's no moral failure. This is biology. And I call it the 4-hour study trap. It's about, you have to get those breaks in. You have to use shorter sessions, and you're going to have to work on this. It says here, I once worked with a learner who described his study routine like this. I sit at my desk for 4 hours every afternoon, but after the first hour I'm not really there anymore. I just keep going because stopping feels like giving up. That is the worst case scenario, and many teenagers do this. They sit at their desk and they just want to die because of boredom. They're not engaged with the work. And in the previous video I made, I said there were even now learners that have a second phone that they get illegally almost, without the parents even knowing. This is not a good idea. That makes us dishonest. So let's rather than sit with our teens and say, okay guys, let's figure this out. What is going on? Right, so there's lots of info here for you. I'm unfortunately going to scroll past all of this. We've done it in previous videos. We got to chapter 3, calm before competence, why stability comes first. This was a very nice chapter because it talks you through the aircraft analogy, and we said a pilot cannot panic. The moment there's bad weather and an aircraft is in trouble and the pilot starts freaking out, that plane's going down. It's about a nice, calm, steady descent. Calm works the same way. When a learner is calm, the brain regains access to its planning and memory systems. Attention becomes available again. So there's a big line for you. Calm creates the mental space. You see, that's why I said space. That's why I said the galaxy. But it's a pun. Now we're talking about physical space where you sit, and the mental space in which competence can grow. Where you sit and you say, I'm learning. I'm busy getting it right. Finally, why? Because I'm learning the right tricks and I'm using the rules. Look at the 90-second rule. This was by Dr. Taylor, Jill Taylor. She discovered that an emotional response lasts 90 seconds. And our kids are taught this now. I'm hoping it'll end up in the syllabus one day, where we literally say you have to teach this to every child that is in a school. When you panic, sit with it, bear it for a minute and a half, and then those chemicals go down and you start feeling better. It says here, if you can wait out 90 seconds without feeding the panic story, oh, I'm going to fail, I'm terrible, this is hopeless. If you can get past 90 seconds, the wave passes. What keeps panic going is not the biology, it's the narrative you attach to it. So we have to learn, if you use the aeroplane metaphor, to land safely. Instead of bracing for impact, you go, this is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to freak out. In the middle of the page here, it says, instead of asking, what must I study tonight? She learned, this is now my case study person, I think it's a girl named Sarah, I can't recall. What will help me feel steady enough to study? What will calm me down? Can be a short walk. Sometimes it meant closing the books earlier, getting an hour extra sleep. I wish our kids would sleep more, and I wish our parents would get those phones out of their rooms and put them on the charger in the kitchen at 9 o'clock and send them to bed. Right, we'll talk about that. But there's no need for guilt anymore. We are not going to play this, I'm calling it the devil's game of guilt and shame and fear. That's what he feeds on, I'm sure of it. Whether you are in agreement with me or not, it feels to me like there's an evil part of the world of studying that's putting everybody off it. And it's because it's based on the fear and the guilt and the shame. There's low energy. We have to raise our kids' energy up. We have to lift them up and say, come, let's get excited about learning again. Learning is beautiful. That's my motto. Learning is beautiful. There's nothing that is more wonderful to me in this world than learning. That moment when a child learns something new and they really get it is wonderful. So go and study chapter 2, guys. And then when we get to chapter 4, it's the environment. This one was practical, not too much theory. It's about that space where you sit. And I've got quite a few interesting thoughts here. They talk about, in research, they talk about the Pavlovian desk, where your brain learns through association. When the same cues repeat, the brain prepares itself automatically. It's like Pavlov's dogs. If you're not familiar with Pavlov's dogs, go and look it up. It's classic conditioning. So just like those dogs started salivating when they heard the sound of the bell ringing, even if there was no food, then you will start being conditioned when you go sit at your desk. Then your brain will say, oh, okay, I'm here to study now. So rituals matter more than motivation. What was the quote I got yesterday? Consistency will outlast creativity every time. When you sit and you get into a routine, it calms you down. Also, routines are good for children, for babies especially. When you break their routine, it's a mess and they start crying. We don't change much in terms of our brains as we grow older. Routines are very healthy. Okay, I'm not on chapter 6 yet, am I? I'm wasting time. Let's see. Chapter 5 was about you don't need a better timetable, you need anchors. We've talked about anchors a lot. I'll give you one more example. Instead of saying I'm going to study for 3 hours this evening, say to yourself, after supper, I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to take a quick break and be on my phone for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to walk to the kitchen, put it on the charger, go back to my room and study for 45 minutes doing English or studying economics. And studying means writing down the main principles and testing myself on whether I know them or not by closing the book and checking and writing them all on one page until I get it right. There's that anchor. If you say, I'm just going to study, that's too vague. And we keep disappointing ourselves. I read a very interesting article and I actually watched Mel Robbins, one of the famous podcasters. She wrote the book Let Them. It's a beautiful green book. You should all read it. It's fantastic. Let Them, the Let Them theory. But she said that when it comes to to-do lists, we are always disappointed because a to-do list never ends. It's bottomless. It just carries on and on and on, and you never finish it. You never get a sense of accomplishment. And she's right. What we need are anchors. When you say, I'm going to do these 4 things today. If I don't do the 4th one, that's also fine. But I'm going to do 3 of the 4 at least. If I get to the 4th one, brilliant. So we are moving from bottomless, never-ending to-do lists to using a calendar. And you say, I'm going to write these 3 or 4 things in. The moment I'm done with them, I'm done for the day. And I've reached my goal. Then I can be on my phone, or I can watch Netflix, or I can go to bed early and take a longer break and relax and listen to my music, or whatever you guys like doing. Because it's possible. If we put the anchors down, you achieve your goals for the day and you feel wonderful. So let's work on those. So this chapter is all about anchors. Look at this one. I'll do the one in the middle there, ritual anchor. I clear my phone, I make a drink, open my notebook, then I begin. Boom. Stop anchor. I stop at 9 p.m., no exceptions. What's done is done. Recovery anchor. If I miss a session, I don't try to catch up, I just show up tomorrow. Doesn't that sound easy? Instead of having the guilt, oh, I didn't study enough, we tend to beat ourselves up. Okay, I want to get to chapter 6. And this is the real studying. And this is where we now start getting into those tricks. This is where the magic happens. What real studying actually is, and why most advice fails. Most learners are never taught how learning actually works. They are shown what to study, tested on what they remember, and judged by the results. But the process in between is left vague and confusing. In that gap, myths flourish. And everybody viewing this, if you go to my website and you click on the freebies link, or you just go to laurensbreitenbach.com/free, you'll get those myths for free. There's a whole download list of a whole lot of freebies. And the myths that persist are all listed on 1 or 2 pages for you there. I think I'll put the link in the description. I must just remember. But there's a lot of myths, and one of them is that the longer you sit, the more you will learn. It's not true. Short bursts, more effective. So if you look, for example, at the illusion of competence, it says here is the uncomfortable truth. Rereading something until it feels familiar is not the same as knowing it. When you reread your notes, your brain recognizes the material. It thinks, yes, I've seen this before. I recognize it. It says that recognition feels like understanding. But in an exam, recognition is not enough. You need to retrieve the information, to pull it out of your memory with nothing in front of you. Recognition and retrieval are fundamentally different brain processes. So the idea that I'm sitting at my book, sitting in front of my books, and I'm at it, I'm studying because I'm rereading and I'm repeating the knowledge on the page, and I'm reading and I'm summarizing. Unfortunately, guys and girls, that doesn't work. It will not get you your marks. You'll do okay, but you're not going to get that distinction that you want. Why not? Because you didn't test yourself. And I think the percentage that I quoted in another video was 30% is reading, 70% is recall, where you have to check, you test yourself, where you don't summarize and read anymore. That's 3 out of 10 minutes. 7 out of the 10 minutes should be testing yourself and checking whether you can reproduce the knowledge without looking. If you look at the forgetting curve of Ebbinghaus, this was in the early 1900s of the previous century, where the psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered that memory fades quickly. It fades so fast that 70% of what you learn is gone after 24 hours. I think there was a video that I watched that says it can be up to 90% of what you learn. So that's basically all of it. You just keep like a tenth of what you've learned within 24 hours. So I think this is the most important part of the chapter, what real studying actually is. Real studying is not about exposure, it's about retrieval. If you can't produce and put the knowledge down on paper without the work in front of you to refer to it, then you haven't memorized it. That's the biggest barrier. You go, how am I going to get all of this into my head? And the trick is to learn how to do retrieval, not to just expose yourself to the knowledge. It says here, learning happens when your brain is required to pull information out, not when information is repeatedly pushed in. The effort involved is recalling, explaining, and reconstructing ideas. So all the tricks that are in this chapter teach you how to explain things simply. We learn the methods. Here are some of them. And you will learn to love these if you give them a chance and you practice them. They will change your life. The blurting method, the Feynman technique, self-testing, and spaced repetition, right? Using flashcards. So this chapter is where the rubber hits the road. I'll take you through some of them quickly. The blurting method is when you close your notes. You take a blank page, write down everything you remember about the topic. It must be messy, it must be incomplete, it must be in any order. You just blurt it all out, right? Then you open your notes and you check using a different color pen or a pencil what you've written down and you compare to what you've got in the book. Then you go, oh wow, I missed this and I missed that, and how could I miss that? And you go, good grief, okay, well, I got this right at least. Oh, I remembered this part. Now studying becomes fun. Okay, blurting it out. And if you do that 3 or 4 times, first of all, the time will just fly. So your study sessions won't be so boring and so long. You're sitting there, you're not trying to do things neatly, you're scratching all over the page. The messier, the better. And then you find the gaps of what you don't know in your mind yet. And you will be shocked at how much you learned. You will actually talk to your friends the next day and you'll be able to tell them all about the work. And they will go, what's going on with you? And then you say, don't you worry, I've learned the blurting method. And then you can teach them about it too. One of my favorite techniques is the Feynman technique. I've done lots of videos about it. It's when you can explain something to someone else in the same way you would talk to a 12-year-old. So let's say you're 16 and you're busy with grade 10 or year 11 or something like that, and you're learning something complicated like how the kidney works in life science, then you're not going to talk about all the different osmosis and pressure and nephrons and everything. I'm not even sure if I'm using the right words, but you're going to talk about the little pipes in the kidney, and you're going to explain how the pressure is used and how the different toxins move, the poison moves from here to there, and it stays behind or it's filtered out. You see, you have to be able to explain something. And I think it was Einstein who said, I can't remember, Albert Einstein was the first one before Feynman who said, if you can't explain it to a child, you don't understand it, even if it's rocket science. If it's like really tough stuff, need to be able to explain it simply. Otherwise, you don't really get it. And Richard Feynman was a Nobel Prize winning physicist. He believed that if you could not explain something simply, you did not truly understand it. He was right, and his technique works. Spaced repetition. Okay, I'm going to skip past this. You can read all about this. This video is a bit long. Short focused beats, long and passive. The Pomodoro technique. We've talked about this a lot. 25 minutes. These days when I talk to students, I say to them, you study for an hour, you book out an hour, but you take a 10-minute break in the middle. For me personally, 5 minutes is not long enough. You can't even make coffee. Okay, so take 10. Do 25 minutes, take 10 minutes break, 25 minutes. And then you take a longer break. You will get done with your work, and the 10 minutes will be such a nice break where your brain really can relax. Go outside or do something. Please don't sit on your phone for that 10 minutes. In the hour that you study, stay away from your phone. Your phone spikes the dopamine. We've talked about this. You want to do dopamine loading for 3 or 4 hours per day. And that means don't look at any phone. Keep the dopamine in your mind and let it build up to a good level. That's how we are built. You work, and then at the end, when you've achieved those anchor goals, then you say, I'm done. Now you can go on your phone and message your friends and look at your TikToker. Okay, so there we go. We are on page 70 of 164. There's so much more to learn here, students, but chapter 6 is the middle chapter. It is a vital piece of work, putting together one course after the other, and it's all the same stuff in different shapes. I'd like for you to go and look at my website, scroll around, get yourself one of the packages. I'm finalizing the Smart Study System at smartstudysystem.com. You can go and do the free diagnostic analysis already on my app there. It's all at hand. The techniques are available, everybody. It's not a secret. You just have to say, let me find out. I want to study. I want to study well. I want to study easily. And I want to study efficiently. It's never going to be easy to study. Studying is difficult. But my motto is, it is supposed to be efficient. If you study efficiently, then you're not wasting your time. You're using your energy in a productive manner. So if you're going to get tired and you're going to get exhausted, then it's because you've done good work. You've done actual productive work, and the results will come. Then you know, I don't mind being tired. I don't mind getting that energy spent. It's good for us to work hard, but you don't want to waste our time and pretend to be working. That's painful. Any professional person who's successful will tell you, hard work is never easy, but it can be very rewarding. And then when you take your break and you relax, you feel satisfied because you've done well. That's the mission. That's my life purpose right now, is to get you guys as students to learn how to study properly without burning out. I think I'm going to stop there for today, and I hope that you've learned something. Go and download my book. Let me show you quickly one more time. It's right there on Amazon. You can just click the link in the description. Leave a comment to tell me if you've learned something, please. I'd love to hear from you. And there will be another video on the screen at some point in this, towards the end here. But the book is free right now, and it's going to be completely free for at least a week. And after that, it'll be available for only a few dollars. So download it. Get the softback if you can. It's a really nice book. It's a nice big workbook. The softback, the soft cover is a wonderful book. I'll show you a picture of it. And then good luck with your exams. I'm going to make quite a few videos still to go through some more of the techniques, and follow the links in the description, and I'll have a freebie ready for you with every video. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.